republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good. For a regular meeting, the first thing on the agenda is Cascade Mountain lands lot line adjustment, running an engineer.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make some remarks before we start.
Okay.
Point, personal privilege.
How about this there?
One, I want to say that you were missed, and we are delighted to have you back, and we hope you're in good health, and I know that I'm speaking for everyone here.
Thank you.
Second thing is, I think we as a committee should commend Nina. You did a wonderful job in your absence and kept everything going the way I'm sure you would and the way you'd like it. So I'd like to just enter in the minutes that with unanimous consent, thank you and congratulations to Nina for such an excellent job.
Sure she did. Sure she did. That was, I don't know. Just by reading the minutes, it's good. Stay at the top of it, though. It's good.
And the last thing goes out to everyone here this evening, as well as the committee. On June 9th here, we are having the public engagement section of the comprehensive plan review. The last comprehensive plan for the town of Armenia was 2007, before there was Airbnb, where food trucks were a West Coast trend, and so many other things have changed. This is the plan that all zoning laws are based on. Generally, it starts with a comprehensive plan, and then it moves to, that is the direction for the community. This is the plan that will take us to hopefully the year 2040. This is the time you have input to say what the town of Armenia will become, what direction should it go. Should it become a resort? And should it become, try to recapture its agricultural heritage? All of those things come out of the plan. And if you have any interest in how Armenia is going to develop, then you will be here on the line. This is a chance for you and tell everyone you know to express their feelings about their town. Thank you.
Cash bar.
Hey.
What's the time?
What is it?
I don't know. I have to,
68. Okay.
68,
thank you.
June 9th, 16. Here we go.
I move the adjournment.
We're not that
That's somewhat premature.
premature, okay. Here we are.
I'm Tom Harvey, Rennie Engineering.
Okay.
I know you all are somewhat familiar with the project.
Yeah.
We've taken 3 existing lots and reconfigured them to provide frontage for 2 landlocked lots. And then, I guess some of the previous questions were regarding the driveway and access to the lots. So we've showed the profile and a concept design of the driveway to get up the hill and uppermost lot. And it did require exceeding 12% and showing 15% along the way. I'm not sure if you were at the meeting back in February 2024 when Peter presented this during our feasibility phase to the fire district.
Different fire district.
Okay. The fire district was agreeable to that 15%, which is why we're pursuing it that way. We'll take the improved plans of the driveway, put them back in front of that fire district, and work on securing their authorization on that at 15% max.
I do have an email, and I got to issue a couple corrections and comments. They do provide us a shared driveway exhibit. It does have a profile. The driveway meanders all the way across the face of this slope. But in doing so, it provides house sites on each of the 3 lots. So it will be a true shared driveway. It will feed to a house site on lot 1, lot 2, and lot 3. As Mr. Harvey indicated, they do use a maximum grade of 15%. The driveway code, as found in your subdivision regulations, requires a maximum of 12%. In speaking with counsel for the planning board, my memo indicates they might need a variance. However, there are specific waiver provisions because this is a subdivision requirement. You and the planning board are specifically empowered under section 105.33 to grant waivers of any section of the code providing that the applicant makes a good faith showing that it is no less protective of the environment, doesn't impact health, safety, and welfare, and they have to make a case. And one of the specific elements of that case would be to get a sign-off from the fire district involved. Mr. Harvey indicated they've already talked. We might impose upon you to make sure they put something in writing, because that would be necessary to help the applicant. As a consequence, they do not have to go to the ZBA. They have to make a good faith showing, and if and when this board decides to adopt an approval resolution, that waiver would be included in the resolution as within your purview and your sole discretion. Next comment, they show the driveway starting down Cascade Mountain Road. We would just ask that lines of sight be established and shown that the driveway meets relative standards there. Okay, and then the last is, it needs to be a little better labeled on the subdivision plat. It's shown, but it's really not labeled. And then ultimately, it will require a written easement agreement, suitable and informing content to the planning board attorney. Usually that's the last step, and until we agreed on the configuration, that probably wouldn't be drafted anyway. So having said all this, what we would suggest is that Mr. Harvey be directed to make the case for the driveway waiver, and that we defer any action until next month, at which time we've already been authorized to provide a resolution, but we decided not to until the issue of the driveway was resolved. That would be, again, reauthorized to provide a resolution for your consideration at next meeting.
Everyone good with that?
I have one question.
Go ahead.
So with the issue of the 15% grade, do we have to have the median fire?
District,
Yes.
And that, will it be, the resolution is contingent upon their approval?
In other words, in order for you to grant a waiver, there has to be a documented case that is suitable and satisfactory, and that it cannot affect the public health, safety, and welfare. Since the responding fire district is in part responsible for that activity, we would need their sign-off in the record for you to grant the waiver. And unless you grant the waiver, the subdivision would basically fail at this point in time.
I guess I should have phrased it that, yes, yes, we should have a resolution pending fire department approval.
Right, your adoption would be pending fire department approval.
Mr. Chair, I would just make one comment for all of our collective thought. In my relatively short time here, I feel like we end up in some discussion sometimes around, well, we previously approved it for X or for Y or for Z, and there's conversations around precedential actions that we've taken. And we have these, I'm not suggesting we don't grant this, I'm just thinking about the fact that we have these grade codes on grade, and then we give a waiver, and now somebody will come next time with some waiver request that we might not want to grant, and now we're in a box because we granted the prior one. And I'm not even suggesting I won't vote for it. I just point out to all of us, we should give real thought when we're giving these waivers, because they set precedent.
They do, and this would not be the first time the planning board had done this. Paul reminded me of other occasions where that waiver has been granted. And to be blunt with you, in considering codes in other towns, 12% is usually a pretty stringent code for a residential driveway. Most driveways grant the planning board the ability, most towns grant the planning board the ability to waive the driveway grades up to 15%. Again, so long as you get a sign off from the fire district and any other entity being involved. And in this case, it's just the fire district and you folks. So
That's very helpful enough.
it's not uncommon, and it's just the language of our code, but in case you do want to look it up, there is specific language in the subdivision regulations which allow you to grant this type of waiver.
Okay.
But again, 12% is stringent for, especially
That's very helpful.
a town with mountains.
Right, okay.
If I could add to that, I mean, these are pre-existing lots that don't have frontage, so these lots would exist and have this issue of the slopes for access, whether we were in front of you for a lot line change or not. So these are not self-created things that we've created, that are existing here.
No, I understand it, but it speaks to a bigger issue, right? that
Understood.
We face in this town around, if you give a waiver for everything and let people subdivide, then it sort of gets to the master plan conversation about what kind of town are we? But, you know, maybe neither here nor there for this one.
Yeah, and I just want to explain that we did study these access routes, these driveways significantly. There's wood roads that go up there that are 22% now. So those, we didn't feel were even worth trying to do. So this was the best way we could serve these.
And
lots.
for the record, most fire districts, and I don't know how this town does, most of them write their truck specifications around a slope limit of generally 15 to 17%.
Okay.
So that's where this derives from. It's so their trucks can get up there without straining. And I think the last specs here is almost 18, if I remember correctly. So there's a recognition on the part of the fire district that this is gonna happen from time to time. And as Tom said, there's existing, I'm sure there are neighboring properties that don't comply with this. This just gives you the opportunity to.
It makes
bring
sense, I was just asking in the minutes,
Well,
to know the logic of
Understood.
15% is reasonable. So when we tell somebody that it's 17%, it's a problem, we know.
My concern is about a year ago, there was a washout just below that property on the Cascade Mountain Road, and they had to close it until the highway department can repair it. So that does factor into the grade, the runoff, et cetera. I hope that's being addressed. Also on that property, about 3 years ago, culvert washed out under the driveway, and they had to replace it. Because they're on there.
Okay.
And again, that's speaks directly to the runoff. So,
Yeah, it's quite out there.
okay, so it's really Cascade Mountain, that washout.
The other piece that the fire department would be looking at is places for a turnaround. Because once you get a truck up there, you gotta turn it around.
Yep, we've got some pull-offs every 500 feet as they require. Where we've got the shared driveway, we kept it at a 16-foot width until the last lot is being served, it reduces down to 12. And at each house site, there's a suitable turnaround for fire trucks.
Yes, they do have a hammerhead at each house site, even though they're not final, they're just conceptual, but they're really the only places houses can go up there.
Yes.
So you know what you need to do, well, then we'll move on,
All right,
okay?
thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Silo Condo, D&E modification, Capital Leary. You are.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman Patrick O'Leary. Welcome back to the board and good evening, board members. We were requested 3 meetings ago to provide some supplemental information by the deputy chair, including an updated tracker for what has been built at Silo Ridge, as well as revisiting the economic analysis that was provided and look back to the original approval within seeker and compare using the original numbers from 2014, the change in removing 13 townhomes and replacing it with 10 condos. So we went back, we provided a document, there's approximately a $40,000 delta on tax generation associated with that. But also when you look at it, the original analysis projected 14 or 15 school children to be generated. 0 school children have been generated today. The incremental uses on the municipality really does not exist. In fact, Silo Ridge bought a fire truck for the fire department. And in addition to that, if you actually made a realistic comparison of the today values of the buildings out there, much greater than what was projected back in 2014. So we stand by the original statement in the consistency document that said there's no significant impact. In addition to that, it doesn't count for replacing the 3 townhomes, some of their location within Silo Ridge in the future for a future tax generation. So We stand by the statement that there was no significant impact from an economic standpoint relative to replacing the 13 townhomes with these 10 condominiums. With that, Mr. Chairman, I think over the course of the past few months, we have answered all questions, provided supplemental information as necessary. I know Mr. Andrews had a couple comments. And with your permission, I'll turn it over to Mr. Andrews at this time.
Okay, you will find a comment memo from me dated May 27th, 2025. I had two previous reviews, October of 2024 and February of 2025. The first is, as Mr. O'Leary indicated, they did update their narrative, they did update their secret consistency statement. They now have the information that's necessary in both those documents. And as he indicated, they did also provide, if you recall back in March, the vice chair had asked for a summary document of what the numbers, and Patrick had included one in their most recent submittal. I compared it to mine, and other than the way I characterized the units versus the way he broke down the units, all the numbers track. So we are both at the same point in where this ends up. They did provide us an updated subdivision plat. They have substantially addressed and identified most of the issues and have squared some of those away. There's probably still some minor edits, but as far as I am concerned, the plat is sufficient for conducting a public hearing. They have identified all the, if you recall, those of you who are a long time silo folks, there's a whole series of interlocking easements, agreements, this goes to that goes to that, all of which need to be updated. Patrick's was pretty successful in untangling all that. There are less than we expected because the water and sewer easements were written exclusive of what the action are taking. So I consider the matter substantially resolved, and they will need to get revised instruments to the planning board attorney for his review and comment. Typically that occurs after the public hearing, so that in case there's any revisions, they get picked up in the instruments. For the purposes of seeker compliance, we will need a consistency statement. In other words, a statement that says this action is consistent and it introduces no new elements than those that were originally studied. And the project represents a change, but it's arguably one that's not that significant because you're taking one type of residential unit, a townhouse, and replacing it with a condo unit. Condo units are typically smaller, in a more compact footprint, and have generally, you can't tell the difference in impacts between the two types of units. I believe that the project is modified is fully consistent with and can be implemented in a manner that complies with and falls within the thresholds associated with the original action. The only comment I will make is a consistency statement must be adopted prior to opening the public hearing for a subdivision. It's less critical on a site plan, but for a subdivision that state law is fairly specific, you need to have seeker closed before you can hold before the public hearing can be opened. I would suggest that the planning board authorize Mr. Van Cott and myself to prepare a consistency statement for the second meeting in June. And I'll keep going.
Do you need a motion right now?
No, we'll summarize at the end. At the end. We'll catch up, we'll come back. We do need Dutchess County Department of Health approval, and I'm not sure how they're gonna approve this normally because there's a subdivision involved. So they either have to grant what's called a permission to file, which is just simply signing the map and say we got no impacts, or because it was the subject of a prior approval, they might have to reissue their approval. I leave that to you in your discussions with them, but they will need to sign the subdivision plat in one way, shape, or form before this is resolved. They resolved my issues with regards to stormwater. They did submit a letter from the Design Review Committee acknowledging these changes and accepting these changes and finding them to be consistent with the balance of the community. They did submit a full set of modified site plans, including the subdivision. I've given you a full listing. They do have profiles for the driveway, because with the condos, what they've always done is put the parking underneath in the basement. And so they had to add driveways. The driveways comply and are consistent with the other condos, so it shouldn't be an issue. There will need to be some minor modifications as they indicated to the plat. They were gonna look at some of the prior approvals and make sure everything's been buttoned up. I don't know where that lies. And then finally, I believe, and I've discussed this at length with Mr. Van Cott, that the record is complete for the purposes of scheduling a public hearing on the matter. The public hearing shall specifically be noted for two actions: amended site plan approval and amended subdivision. The planning board must also make a referral to the Dutchess County Planning. And so what I would suggest is that, number one, we be authorized to prepare a consistency statement. Number two, the town, Judy be authorized to make a submittal to Dutchess County Planning. And three, that the planning board schedule the public hearing for site plan and subdivision for the second meeting in June. I believe that gives you enough time, Judy, to get everything. And that would be my recommendation, sir.
On the, any comments on this?
A question and a comment. Patrick, is the parking underground in these condos, or is it underground?
Underground.
And then a general comment for myself, I'm going to abstain from voting on this.
That's fine.
I'm going to abstain because I received an opinion from the ethics board suggesting that my voting might give rise to the appearance of a conflict of interest. I don't agree with the opinion. I don't believe the standard is an appearance of a conflict. I believe it's an actual conflict. But while retaining my right to decide to vote at a later time on matters related to silo, I'm going to abstain in order to avoid any controversy. So I will abstain from the thank you.
We need a motion for all the stuff John just read off.
I could make a motion to recommend that our attorney and also our engineer get together for comprising a consistency statement. And I'm forgetting what the other.
Circulate to Dutchess County Planning.
Circulate the public hearing,
What he said.
whatever he said.
And then public hearing, and please, for the record, I hate to be a stickler, you must cite, it is both for site plan and subdivision. They are two separate actions and they must be noticed as such.
So toward the public hearing, correct?
That is correct.
And a second by Walter, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so carries. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one additional matter for you.
Before you do that, I'm going to, on behalf of Judy, ask that you get a package to Judy that was consistent with your last package, Patrick, so that she may circulate it to Dutchess County. We need it in digital form, if you can get that to her as soon as possible so we can get it out.
Get it to you for Friday.
Thank you. Now
I
you
have a question for Mr. Everybody. I'm sorry, that's something.
He has something first. Go ahead.
We have been discussing presenting, beginning to present modifications to the approved master plan to the board. And we suggested over the past few months that we thought it would be beneficial both to the board and Silo Ridge to possibly have two work sessions where we could introduce the proposed changes to the master plan, go over them with you, allow you a couple weeks to absorb and contemplate, provide comment, and then we would come back for a second workshop with you to solicit your input and discuss your comments, whether they work, don't work, what we can do to incorporate them or otherwise. If at all possible, we're ready to begin the process. We'd like to see if we could schedule, there's no formal application process for this, but we do think it's a good idea and it will be beneficial to the board as well as Silo Ridge. So we respectfully request in July if we could schedule the first workshop and at your convenience, the following 2 weeks later to do it.
We'd like you know in June, and we'll have the meeting in July. How's that?
Okay.
That's part.
My question just had to do with the recreation center, the planting of trees. You know, I haven't noticed any trees going in there as I go past, so I just want to make sure that that is something that is going in there as it was discussed back when.
All the trees that were requisite for obtaining the necessary permits to use the facilities were actually installed and completed. I actually walked it, counted them,
Okay.
they're all in, and you probably don't notice them because they're all tucked behind the Whalen property in and around, and the trees on the Whalen property have been planted as well. And I drove by there, the fence is actually working. You don't see a lot of what's going on, and that's why you probably didn't notice them, but the trees are all there.
Okay.
And there's final landscaping to be completed once the site is completed, but we fully lived up to our obligation relative to the planting of those trees between the facility and Route 22. based on our-
Well, thank you, and thank you.
All set, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and welcome back again.
Yes, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is Open Space Institute, Lot 1, Justin Bog Hollow.
Good evening. My name is Steve Miller. I'm with Beatty and Watson Surveying and Engineering. I'm here representing OSI, Jeremy, and Miller and D. Carmine. Real briefly, this is the first time this submission has been before the board. Open Space Institute had, within the last year or so, purchased about 200 acres along Bog Hollow Road. The intention of Open Space is to eventually convey that to the New York U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as part of park areas along Bog Hollow Road. To the adjoining neighbors, Miller and DeCarmine and Jeremy, who have homes along Bog Hollow Road, have been using portions of what had been OSI's property and previously Bog Hollow property, which were essentially lawns and a little bit of parking area. So rather than creating any more issues, OSI took it upon themselves to try to resolve these issues before they made a conveyance to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So what the lot line adjustment does is it removes a 30-foot wide strip from OSI's property and annexes it to Miller and DeCarmine, and it takes a 20 and 25-foot strip in an L shape from OSI's property and annexes it to Jeremy's property. There's no new lots being created, there's no new construction, it's merely a revision to the lot lines in order to accommodate improvements that the neighbors have made that OSI is willing to let go. I received a copy of comments from John Andrews. There's nothing in his comments that we take exception to. Any of the comments that he had are some revisions that are minor. And I think with that and his recommendation that we look to the board to schedule a public hearing for the next meeting. Happy to take anybody's questions.
We'll let John talk first of his comments.
Yeah, I'm not gonna revisit a lot. Mr. Miller did a pretty good job. This is basically, they're involving 3 lots. It's considered a minor subdivision. It should be processed as a minor subdivision. And unfortunately, for a minor subdivision, a public hearing is required. Lot lines are a type 2 action under seeker. No environmental review is required. A fully completed short environmental assessment form was included with the application. No conditions of concern were identified. The stream corridor overlay district should be clearly indicated on the plat. There are some shaded areas, and I think they're intended to indicate water bodies. And unfortunately, the overlay district extends 150 feet from the mean high water level of those water bodies. It doesn't have any effect on the lot lines because this is a no improvement subdivision. This is just a property transfer. But it should be, and we've done this before, you can remember Offensen and other, they need to be shown on the plat. Not a big deal. We will find the application is substantially complete. we would take no exception to scheduling a public hearing for the next available planning board meeting. Unfortunately, that's the second meeting in June, if I'm not mistaken. We would ask that the agricultural data statement be revisited. A check of the current tax rolls indicate that a number of properties within 500 feet are within Ag District 21. The town requires notification to any parcel listed as being in the Ag District. Not all of them are used as farms, but because they are in the Ag District, we
That was
require
the
notification.
distinction we were making.
Yes, and we find that because some of the owners claim their farms, if they're in the district, we make the notification,
No problem.
and that's to protect you animals.
Mhm.
We will need an owner's consent note for each of the owners to be added to the plat, will be signed and dated following date of last revision. Mr. Miller's certification will need to be signed and sealed prior to signature by the chairman, and again, permission to file from Dutchess County Department of Health prior to signature by the chairman. This is relatively straightforward, folks. This is a no-brainer. It's basically a no harm, no foul, and it really just memorializes what I think has been the prevailing use of the properties with no harm to anyone involved.
Looks like an improvement, actually.
It could be considered that, yes.
I have no brainer questions, no brainer. So are they deeding over part of OSI's property to the current residents?
Yes.
So that means, I assume OSI is a nonprofit, I assume there'll be some tax benefit for the town because they will be getting increased property in their private owners. And just want to make sure that we don't miss that in the assessor's office.
Once this all gets filed and clarified, he gets his whack at the beehive, yes.
Just want to make sure.
And that's above my pay grade.
Yeah, that's the truth.
I don't want it to come out of my-
As that being said, is there any other questions or concerns? As that being said, I need a motion to have the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Definitely agree, we'll be here a little bit late. Okay.
Excuse me, I mean, was there a concern about the second meeting in June?
No, we can't do it next meeting, we don't have
Okay.
sufficient time to get the advertisement.
Understood.
I didn't want to inconvenience you, but
leak paper.
Okay,
it's the second meeting in June.
okay.
And I commend OSI for what they're doing.
That's great, that's a
Thank
good
you.
thing.
I will do that.
Did you vote, Mr. Chairman, and everybody say aye?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. So we'll see you second.
Thank you very much.
With that all being said, did everyone read the minutes of 5/14/25?
Yes.
Need a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So carried, need a motion for adjournment?
Oh, what are we doing at our next meeting? What's on the agenda?
That's the June 11th,
And I will not be here June 11th, I'll be away.
Okay.
and Jim is gonna be away, he just told me, so it's two down. So, I received today, late in the mail, or an email, both, referrals that I put in, for the last time, Usdin Cohen
Yeah.
and the Broughton, so I assume they'll be back on June 11th also?
They're beyond for resolutions, yeah.
Yeah.
Which was the first one, I'm sorry?
Usdin Cohen, it's 54 Kennel, solar,
There are two solar
two
applications,
solars.
both were ready for a resolution, but they needed the county referral.
And so just got them today, so. Cascade Creek will be on, Dean Stud will be on,
What are they on for? The Cascade Loop stuff?
the most recent.
Updates?
Actually, Cascade Creek, I have nothing on yet, so
And
I
Keen's,
assume we're gonna
what
have
is, was
something.
Keen started in that might be voted on?
Hmm.
What are we waiting for?
I asked that because,
George James.
because that's another thing I
Well,
want to
it's
ask
the George
you.
James, it's a
It's
visual
George
stuff.
James kind of in to show.
George James is coming in, and then there's going to be a board discussion on matters,
Yeah.
so
So with the Cascade Creek stuff, you guys were supposed to get stuff in to me last week too, to go to the consultants to talk to the applicant with. Did you guys have any comments about that one? About the visual?
I know Paul was working on it, but I don't.
Yeah, well, Ken did, I did, you did it, I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah, I didn't see any of it in my office.
So we talked with Paul John at this meeting about, so we were having these conversations around Keen stuff. only 3 of the 4 people here at that meeting would be voting on these settlements, does that create an issue?
That I cannot answer, sir, that would be a question for Paul.
I agree.
And,
Majority.
if, when I asked if you could put that in an email, and, Judy will forward it on to
Yeah.
Paul, or you can go direct to Paul,
So
sir.
that's fine.
And then when are we, this would be for Rosanna. Have you all met applicants for the board? Have you interviewed any yet?
We have not, and I believe we only got one application.
Really? Can't imagine why everyone would want to do this.
For 7 years.
Have you meetings?
I go out, I'm
Same
not
same
sure
reason they
that-
play baseball games.
What's that? Sorry.
I'm not sure that, I don't know if we will do it before June 11th, I could be wrong, but maybe.
Well, whatever, it's
Okay,
okay.
I was just curious.
You're just ready to go on this. Well, with that being said, is there any other comment from the board?
I move we adjourn.
Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
So carried.
They'll second.
There we go.
I'm just gonna give you a, by comparison.